answers to those questions. But it also occurs to me that um, so I have to get it to like 5 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, like I asked a tutor how to do it, and I don't know if this is well advised because it kind of like interfered with the thesis, and he told me I could do it on like the contrast between like open source and like proprietary, and so
Yeah.
I think I can manage to do that uh, with the different natures of the job, but the sources I have are sort of skewed towards that, and so I guess I
Mm.
kind of wanted to like flesh out some parts of. I don't know. It's such a like sort of broad career with
Yeah. You mean a programming career, software
yeah.
development? Yeah. Well, yeah. Boy, uh, there's a lot there. Um, I get a column every day on my phone. It's called Quora Digest, Quora Digest,
Hmm.
and they talk about these things. How have you? How many hours do you work? Is it worth getting into computer engineering or not? Or is software going to be software development still going to be in demand as the years go by? Is it easy to get a job? How do you do an interview? That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot there. Programming is, I guess, once when you start out as a rookie, so to speak, you work with a senior uh, programmer in the beginning,
Hmm.
and they basically help you out. And you get assignments, specifications. Say, I want you to write a program that does the following in English, and you work out the logic, and you show it. You work with your supervisor. You might meet once or twice a day on that.
Would that be like a software architect?
No, it would be just a programmer with more experience,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And you'd be given small tasks. When I was back in the early days, although things have changed, you're not expected to generate much code in a single day. Much, what I mean by generate much code, meaning code that actually works perfectly well. I mean, you can write 100 lines of code, but if it doesn't work, then it doesn't count. So I forget what the number was. For us, it was very small, but we didn't have the technology we have nowadays. So now you can produce more. So you shouldn't confuse productivity with production, right? So productivity means writing good code in a certain period of time versus writing more code in the same period of time,
Hmm.
which might not be as stable or reliable. Uh, so yeah, and then you move to then you become independent, and eventually you move up. You become senior, and you start mentoring more junior people. And if you have management skills, uh, or you want to be in management, or both, you then become a team leader, small team at first, then project manager, and so on,
Hmm.
um, on specific projects, which also may include coding, especially for small teams. But if it's a large team, chances are you won't have a chance to do any coding yourself, but you might help others solve problems. And
Hmm.
the problems go beyond the technology. Uh, there are lots of personality problems, uh, you know, personnel type problems that have nothing to do with the technology at hand. It's all that'll occur in any workplace, and
Mm.
your team members may may disagree with each other on various things. It's healthy for them to disagree on project matters, and you need to step in and arbitrate and make sure that everybody understands which way we're going. So there's that. Um, and this can happen very rapidly in software development. We're talking about a span of a couple of years. You
Mm.
could move up very quickly. Um, what else is involved in the paper? Like
Yeah.
this is a typical life cycle of a programmer. Um,
When you said team leader versus project manager, does it have to do with so what would the team be corresponding to as like a component of the project? Would that be like a module?
yeah, for example, no, yeah, you might a small team might be assigned the task of writing the user interfaces, for example, for a certain project, or writing the database portion, database access, if there is one. Different blocks or different components, and so each team would work independently. They'd have their specifications, and the team leaders would talk with each other and will occasionally bring all the teams together to have a general discussion to see if everything fits. So yeah, project manager is a higher level, which would involve the manager getting in touch with the client on a regular basis and making sure that everything's on budget, on time. It gets into management proper, basically, and that each employee is producing, each programmer is producing as expected, and they resolve issues where that doesn't happen. And there'll be a lot of dismissals going on and hiring new people. That's what a project manager does.
Mm.
So it's a responsibility. I mean, it's business. Money is involved.
But I've also heard, besides sort of like management, my sister's moved like I think she started out in software development. She hasn't gotten a degree in the field, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
so it. I didn't ask her exact like hierarchical position. I don't know how it would apply there, but it sounded to me like she also has sort of extended sort of roles. So
Yes.
I was wondering about the because I think she tests and she also does the security like passwords and
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was wondering, besides like sort of vertical, is there kind of like chance for like lateral sort of change in your duties?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. If you could be working in programming, but that you may find that you're better suited to being as a database administrator, for example. Uh, and if you learn something about databases, you can manage the server and do other things. It depends. I mean, yeah, there are many things you can do. It's endless.
Mm.
And some people like to work at a help desk, for example. That's also possibility. Not easy. Help desk is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might need a little more experience for a help desk, but yeah, or uh, you might work for another department that's working on an interesting project, and they need programmers. I mean, I've worked on projects where they had large teams, and then the manager, the overall manager of the project, would pop his head in and call me to have a chat, and he'd say things like, "Listen, I need something done really quickly. I don't want anyone else involved. So why don't you take on this little task and go see so and so and talk to them and see what they want and build the software and so on and so forth, and do it without telling anyone."
Hmm.
Things like that, right? So I'd go off for 2 or 3 months and do this project, and then come back to them. These things happen. So
So it has a sort of it has a sort of like natural quality to it, I guess.
yeah, it's you feel your way as you go, sort of,
Mm.
and you never. Let's say you start, you get hired for position X. Uh, in 2 years, don't be surprised if you're in position G or something. You never know where you're going to be.
Hmm.
It depends on, yes, the dynamics, what's going on. Um, but one thing you can guarantee, software development, it's going to be long hours, and uh, it's rewarding though if you like solving problems. It's
Hmm.
you wouldn't care much about the long hours. Your girlfriend might, or your wife, or you might miss out on some social life, but that's the life of a programmer,
Hmm.
pretty much. Yeah. But I'll tell you one thing: a programmer will, in my experience anyway, uh, I've never had trouble getting a job.
Hmm.
All right. Neither have any of my colleagues that I know that are in this field. There's always a demand. In fact, I'm still getting solicitations, and I ignore them because I don't want to work anymore. Just teaching.
Hmm.
Um, once your resume gets out on the internet somewhere, people will see it and say, I need this guy, and they'll send me an email, and I'll say, sorry, can't, you know. So there's always work in this field so far, anyway.
And that I guess that reminds me of the second paragraph. Yeah, the salary, benefits, education, training.
Yeah. Generally, a lot of companies will pay for that,
Hmm.
for training, and if you take classes at a college, they might also pay for the tuition, either partially or fully. Um, that's been my experience. Yeah, so keep in mind that when they pay for your education, further education beyond what you have, they're also basically uh, tying you down, you know, so that you have to sort of uh, stay with them
Hmm.
in order to finish. And in that way, it's a quid pro quo, so to speak. They pay for your education, you work for them. And, because programmers, they're always being solicited by outside parties, um, and they're always tempted with more salary to go somewhere else.
Hmm.
And, if you're a good programmer, your reputation kind of starts to, somebody will talk about you, or somebody else will go find a job and they will ask me, "Hey, do you know any other good programmers?" And that's how it starts.
Hmm. But
And
I was wondering, because there was this one source I had about open source that talked about how, well, there's, I don't, you probably know about it, the structure with like committers and stuff, right? And
no, I'm not too familiar with open source
it's
software.
like, it's like people start out as users, then
Yeah.
contributors, then
Oh,
they
I see
become
what you.
committers, and the committer means like a commit bit. So they're basically like it's kind of like the traditional
Oh, no, yeah. Now that you mention these terms, I did. I've read a book about it. I haven't done it, but I've read a book about it.
hmm,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the traditional organization, but it's less like it's less like they tell you explicitly what to do, and it's more like users of the
Yeah.
programs will sort of like run into certain problems, and then
Yes.
they'll show those problems, or they'll suggest innovations or debugs for them.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah.
it's more like I guess it's more like if the build part of the process of like design, build, test, or the build and test parts
Yes.
were more in charge than the design part.
Yeah. Yes, it's true. Now I know. I remember things are coming back. Yeah, you contribute, and you commit some piece of software or portion to the project. And, yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, I was kind of wondering, it touches into both the hobby side of it, but also, uh, I mean, it's vaguely, I wouldn't say anti capitalistic, but sort of like communalist.
To some extent, I mean, they have different rules. I remember, the developer of Linux, Torvalds, Linus Torvalds. He made it open source at one point, but they do have strict rules also.
Hmm.
Um, so if it's open source, it can go places if it's a good product. But there has to be some control. You can't just let anybody make changes. You have to have a committee or group that verifies and approves uh, additions to the project or to the software or contributions. So what he did was he put out the core elements and said these cannot be changed, right? But these belong to me. I'm the only one who can change them or modify them or improve. But we need all these other modules, and so go for it, kind of thing. And so yeah, that's it's not a bad model. I mean, took him places. So be all right. Okay, got anything else? I gotta go soon.
Um,
It's
well, the third paragraph is on the working day on the job.
the working day. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm Yeah. What can I tell you? You mean the working night? Yeah, it depends on the projects. Like I said, you don't get much social life. Sometimes there's traveling, and you're always on a plane going somewhere. Um, and sometimes, well, these days these days there's not much need for traveling because we have remote access. You can work from your kitchen or your bedroom. It's
Yeah,
not a
telework.
big deal. Yeah, it's much easier now. But there's a lot of you work as long as you need to, but you need to rest. You can't work continuously. You have to take a break. Go
Uh,
watch a movie or something. Yeah.
so then,
The workday is typical. Some companies, depends on the employer, will insist on working no more than 8 hours a day and you go home. But some others are project oriented. They want you to finish the project, and you know, so you end up working longer hours.
I don't know how much it varies by industry too, because well, I guess there's different fronts like sales, for instance, online sales. There's I don't know if
Yeah,
there's any dedicated firms to like automotive software or something like that.
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, I guess
yeah. I
like
don't know. Yeah, there are these. What do they call them? Industry specific, targeted at certain industries like medical professions, legal. They call that vertical software. That's what it is. So you can develop software packages that are used by certain types of industries, certain clients, and this is basically commercial off-the-shelf stuff,
mm,
um, which a lot of places are going for. They're instead of having software developed, they're buying it. But even then, they still need programmers to add to it because there's always uh, an opening to add to the software. It's not completely closed, right? So they leave you a window to add your own code to sort of customize it for yourself, for your clients.
mm.
Uh,
I've heard
yeah,
there's a contrast between sort of the Google and Facebook sort of working conditions and say like a game developer, because a game developer, for instance, has a lot of like crunch time.
yeah,
But I guess they both have crunch time, but
yeah.
maybe
They
one is
all they
more
all
work.
have crunch time. It's part of it. It depends on what you're working. If I mean, I worked for a retail outfit, a chain, one of those chains that has a lot of stores, outlets,
Hmm.
and every night you had to work every day because the store was open 7 days a week, and well, we didn't work on weekends, but other people did. But you had to finish a cycle every day. You can't not finish the daily stuff because if things go wrong during the day when they're selling things and you don't capture enough data, or the machines break down, or some of the machines break down, then you have to sit up half the night fixing them before the next day begins. You
Hmm.
see that kind of cycle?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I'd imagine it also. I don't know if with regards to the project scopes, like video games, they have this sort of perennial development, every 2 or so years. But it
yeah.
seems like some firms might have like their main product, and that can kind of um, philosophically or like
Mm,
perspective wise, uh, it's easier to sort of unfold that little by little.
Uh-huh.
But
Well, game
maybe
develop. Yeah, I don't know much about game development, but
that was just kind of the most kind of visible thing to me, I guess.
yeah, it's a lot of people are interested in it. But let me tell you, seriously, you want to get into game development? I know one thing about it. It needs a lot of math.
Hmm.
Eventually, you're going to run into it.
Like the sort of matrix multiplication with the cosine sine in 3 dimensions.
A lot of, yeah, linear algebra, all kinds of things. Statistics, probability. Um, yeah, you need a lot of understand these things, which,
Probably there's like
yeah,
the likelihood that a point is somewhere in a square or something like that.
yeah, things like that.
Like,
Yep, it's uncertainty, and some of it gets into physics also. Um, because it's modeling. Gaming is modeling. You're mimicking the real world, whatever the subject of the game might be. And so, there's an infinite amount of possibilities. Um, and those can only be handled through mathematical theories, principles.
mm.
So,
I was
yeah,
reading I was reading Chaos Making a New Science by James Gleick.
James Gleick, yeah. I have read that book, yeah, long time ago.
I'm only on like page 70 by now, but I found it interesting how they were talking about the meteorologist Lorenz who gave like a system of equations for like old clunker. I think I remember it being like 30 operations per second, and like how
Right.
he found the sort of um, chaos in the system. I don't know.
Well, he was on the team that was building the atomic bomb.
Hmm.
He traveled between Princeton and New Mexico. I think it was White Sands. I forget where the site where they were building the first prototype. But they were building a computer in order to do the calculations, and he was one of the engineers that helped build the ENIAC
Hmm.
first and during the Second World War. Yeah, he's a fascinating character, and he'd look up at the clouds and see certain patterns that nobody else would see. I don't know. He he had this gift, where you know, that's another thing you need to have. You have to have a gift. Yeah, ordinary people may not apply, so to speak. Anyway, listen, I really have to go. I have something at 8:30. We're getting there. So I
Okay.
hope this was helpful.
Thank you.
If
Just one last question. Do you mind if I use this as a source?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The last question was future outlook.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that's a paragraph 4.
Yeah. Future outlook is you might have to deal with a new generation of computers. Silicon-based computers, the ones we're using today, will continue to exist. But if you're going into specialized applications like games or simulation of very complex models in medicine, engineering, science, astronomy, astrophysics, aeronautics, etc., you're going to start needing to use the next generation of computers, which may be quantum computers.
Hmm.
Okay, and quantum computers, uh, or quantum computing rather, you need to have a strong foundation, and that's the probability and statistics, linear algebra, for sure. Um, Complex number theory, and what else? And quantum physics itself, of course. You have to know a little bit about the physics. I mean, you don't have to become a physicist, but you need to know how superposition and electron entanglement work. How, because that's what a quantum computer is based on, these basic principles, right?
Mm.
Quantum physics, which the physicists themselves don't understand. But anyway,
Well,
so that's the future, right?
yeah.
That's one aspect of the future. But for most business applications, like finance companies, banks, etc., what we have right now today is quite adequate.
Mm.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Well,
All
I'll
right.
I'll let you get to what you need to do.
Okay. Thanks.
Hmm.
Take care. See you Monday.
See ya.
Bye.
I could just download it and